Namaste. Welcome to Such Conversations Matter. Conversations which represent the future we should have. I'm your host, Saurabh Nanda. Today's guest is Mr. Pranav Chaturvedi. Pranav sir and I, we know each other since 2014, since the time I started working with Pratham Test Prep. He's the co-founder of Pratham Test Prep along with Ankit Kapoor, who was also a guest on our show in season 1, episode 11 about education technology. Pranav sir heads a company called Favcy, which is a venture builder. Pranav sir is a pass out of Shahid Sukhdev College of Business Studies in Delhi University, and since then he has worked in the insurance domain, in other sales areas of other domains, ultimately leading to education and. His entire experience of building products, building startups, has helped him create this entire concept around venture building, through which he has helped more than 25 companies take shape. In this discussion, I want to discuss with him the startup ecosystem which exists in India, how we can improve it, what all are the challenges, how is it different from the Western world, and what can be the future for it. So, without any more delays, let me invite him over. Hi, Pranav. How are you?
Very well, very well. Thank you for inviting me, Saurabh. How have you been?
Oh, I've been good, and it's a privilege to have you here. We wanted to have this conversation last year, but since last year we just couldn't find time. I'm really happy that finally we've been able to sit together and have a chat about this.
Yeah, I've been waiting for 13 months now to come here. So I'm actually quite pleased to be here.
Great. Okay, so let me just quickly ask you, what have you been doing in the last 2 years? The last 2 years have been crazy, amazing for people around the world. How have they been for you?
So actually, my last 2 years, for me, it wasn't just the COVID. In 2019, actually, I was very unwell. I fell sick for about 2-3 months, and then about it took me about another 2-3 months to recover. So 2019 is when I actually made the company remote, and this was pre-COVID because I couldn't go out of my home. I was hospitalized for a while. I wasn't very active. So 2019 Feb to August is when I created these models to make the company, the venture builder that I represent, remote, so as to say, so that I could manage from my home. And it was a blessing in disguise for me personally, because when COVID hit, we were completely prepared as a team. We had built all the kind of frameworks for remote working. We had built content repository departments where you could actually go on Zoom, record your sessions, and all of that was then created. And we built complete processes and frameworks for making sure that everybody could work remotely. So for us, apart from the unfortunate incidents that COVID brought, which was physical harm to a lot of friends and colleagues. Uh, it's been good actually. As a company, we were able to scale up. We've really scaled up during COVID, and God's been very kind. So all good over the last 2 years.
Wow, that's very good to hear. Actually, it has been, COVID has actually precipitated digitization for a lot of people, but a lot of them were already prepared, at least mentally, if not, with infrastructure. And people like me as well. I mean, I just completely moved digital after that. It was a blessing in disguise. I just hope that this continues. I think that the people are more accepting now, but I hope this continues. What do you think? Will this digitization and remote working continue?
Yes. So I think all three. Digitization, digitalization, digital transformation. All three. All three will continue and have to continue. There was this report which had come, an ASCOM report, if I'm not mistaken, about 2 years back, where they were saying that about from the $5 trillion economy that they want to create, 30% will become digital first money. And if you look at it, that really means that currently there are only about 55 to 60 lakh people who are controlling that digital first money. And therefore, it's very highly skewed and will create more disruption in the economy, and therefore the people from the old economy have to transform themselves towards the new digital economy. COVID just, as you very rightly said, just increased the speed of it, and I see this going now and becoming the new norm. In fact, we work with a lot of non-technical founders. So our thesis as a venture builder is we work with non-technical founders and we help them to bridge the digital gap. The numbers have just shot up. We're seeing a lot of family offices in the old economy who believe that they can't digitally transform themselves, but have created dollar pools and are now investing in the digital economy. So I'm seeing a huge change. The old economy is moving, is taking all the steps that they have to take to make themselves in line with what the new digital economy will be. So I think this is here to stay, and this will only increase. The rate of change will just keep increasing.
Wonderful, because that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Now, before going deep into it, I just wanted you to just summarize your professional journey so far, because you're the best person to do it.
So it's been you know a strange journey. If somebody hears my story, it's a very strange journey. I passed out of College of Business Studies in 2003, and I got selected in MetLife. I was there for about a year. I got into Kotak, and there I was across the financial sectors. I got exposure in almost everything, financial markets, insurance, AMC. So I got an exposure to that side of the world. Uh, my predominant skill during those days was also selling. So I was a financial sales guy, so as to say. So 2008 is when I decided to set up my first company, and with a college friend we set up a company, and it was a consulting company. It was doing financial education courses, etc. When we actually set up, post that we set up IIFM. You've already interviewed Ankit in one of your other sessions, and so Ankit, Asit, and I, we were all college friends from CBS, and we set this up, and then Pratham happened. Pratham was the test prep company. So Pratham is, what Akash is to science, Pratham is to commerce. So, we've been, again, very blessed and fortunate that that company did well. And from Pratham, actually, the whole journey for me personally started of understanding digital first companies and also investments. Because while I was at Pratham, and I'm still there. I'm a one third shareholder and a director, but I'm not actively involved now. But while this is now 2010, 11, 12, we started creating a lot of financial products which were digital first. Products like Gold at 18, we did some Golden Fellowship and things like that. And we ran them completely on basis of inbound marketing. So we actually were the first ones to start looking at how inbound marketing will start uh, having an impact on the kind of educational courses. So we were till date we are actually a classroom based program. We have now been able to digitalize ourselves. But this is 2010, 11. We created these kind of small capsule courses. We did inbound marketing, so I learned all of that, and we started investing. We invested in a few ventures, uh, mostly at tech ventures, and I was leading those investments. So I think my stint as a on the venture builder side started in 2011 when we started investing, when we started playing with these kind of digital first programs. From there, we were very fortunate. We invested in another company. We got to learn, things about Nasdaq OTC listings. So there was this company that we had partnered with. So we picked up again trades from there. So I started gaining some kind of exposure from an end-to-end perspective, right? From setting up a digital first course, running inbound marketing, then getting exposure to investments and how investments work. What are the not the right things to do in investment per se, and then also some exposure to what's like a Nasdaq OTC listing. How does that play? What's market making and things like that. So I got a good sense of idea from an end-to-end perspective, and this was all broken up. And I think 2014-15 is when we decided and said that let's try and build something which is at a venture building scale, and the word venture building wasn't known then. So what we were doing was, and I'll tell you the problem that I started solving. This may be of interest. Is when we were investing in tech founders, and no offense meant to them. When we were investing in them, the challenge was that they fell in love with their code. So they just went deep into their code, making sure that the APIs work. They started loving the whole idea of recalibrating their old softwares, etc. They never hit the market, and that's a problem. So when you back a 20, 21 year old techie, uh, they seldom have an idea of the market, and therefore it's very difficult for them to go to market in some manner, and therefore they use these kind of inbound tools, but it's very difficult. When we were investing in non-tech founders and non-technical founders who are trying to build a digital first venture, that's even more challenging. Not because they don't understand the market, not because they're not good at executing, but because a non-technical founder is a very services-based founder, right? They have a very execution-first mindset, so they execute, hoping something will happen. Now, digital doesn't work like that. Digital is a very architectural concept, right? So it's almost as similar as saying that, hey, Saurabh, take these 10,000 bricks, throw them in the air, and build a house. You can't build. You can't execute if even if you have the raw material. So digital is very architectural first. You have to architect the whole thing. You have to figure out, what's my positioning, what's my market, what's the problem I'm solving. So you have to architect all of this. Then you have to project plan it. Then you have to resource allocate, and then you have to execute. With services founder, we realize that if they get all of this done, then they are able to execute much better than a tech founder. But building all of this was a massive challenge with non-technical founders. So we felt that what if we could look at non-technical founders who have market depth and start building a digital first or a digitally transformed business with them, so that once it's developed, they can then start running with it. And with that thesis, we started something in 2014-15, and our initial years were not so easy. A startup helping another startup wasn't something that people accepted. So what we did was we started calling ourselves like an operating system. We didn't even have a word venture builder then, as I said, and we started calling ourselves operating system. And we said, okay, let's go to non-technical companies which have or which can possibly create a digital first presence. So we went to companies like Kolkata Knight Riders, IPL teams. We worked with Delhi Capitals, then Delhi Daredevils. We worked with a lot of ISL teams. I think 8 out of 10 ISL teams we worked with in some capacity. And we started, modeling ourselves something like a corporate venture builder. So we said, okay, what we'll do is we'll help you to validate an idea. We'll help you to create a business model. We'll do a traction for you prior to building a product. Then we build a product, and then we'll go post product traction. And we started essentially articulating the whole assembly line very well with these companies. It was a services based work, so there wasn't an upside. This is a lot of hard work. Venture building is a lot of hard work, and there was no upside because again it's just pay for business. It wasn't equity. We couldn't get equity from these companies for what we were doing. But what it did in hindsight was it helped us really to make sure that the assembly line that we call today the venture building assembly line, that got polished, and it's still improving. I mean, I think it's day zero. Whenever I look at it, it's always improving. But in 2018 and 19, we took that and we started going to startups, and we started saying that now we are going to do an equity swap for the asset that we put. So that's the model we started developing. We today work with non-technical founders. We help them by giving them the venture builder assembly line. We've also now partnered with funds who are exclusively investing in the venture builder, like OpenBook. So we've gone the whole hog as a venture builder. We've broken our services down into products now. So there's something that we're launching called Ideas Not Built Yet platform, which is for founders, again in the 0 to 18 month journey, who can digitally now learn how to go about venture building without even our support. Then today we are I think meeting about, if I'm not mistaken, about 250 to 300 founders a month. Uh, where out of which we are looking to venture build about 25-30 founders a year. So we have a lot of founders who come to us, but we're not able to work with them because of our limitations of the assembly line. And therefore they go towards these kind of products where they can learn on their own and then they can create on their own. We have a network. So how we work is that how a VC works. VC raises money and then deploys capital. A venture builder takes equity from founders, and then part of that they liquidate with angel investors. So today we also have an angel group, angel network created by Favcy called Favcy First Check, which is about I think three and a half thousand investors, and so we have that as a roaring business. And then of course we have the fund, which is now double downing on the best of companies that are coming down. So yeah, so that's I think in the last 5 minutes, I think that's what we really do as a venture builder. That's what we built, and very fortunate now we are working about 25 odd portfolio companies, of which 8 9 have gone on to raise more money, doing very well. 4 5 are now organically growing. They don't need money. 2 3 have died. So I think the mixture is there, but I think what we've seen is the success rate is much higher than what is outside of the venture builder. So yeah, again, as I said, God's been very kind.
That's amazing, actually. How I view this and how I understand this, and please correct me, if I'm wrong. There are two perspectives. One is an educator's perspective, and then the other is the aggregator perspective. Uh, so the educator perspective, and since you're an educator yourself, is like how we mentor our students, end to end, in a way which is everything outside school we are able to provide in certain way, so that they end up in a certain place where they wish to be, which can be an university, a program, or a job or something like that. So you do the same instead of a student, but for a, let's say, a startup, a small budding MSME, right? But in the digital space.
Yes. So I think you're right. If I zoom out, pause, and have a look at the venture builder, it is a learning and development platform, but at the same time with a hardcore practical application, because you're generally playing with money, ideas, and you're generally building large companies. So yes, it's an L&D plus practical plus an ecosystem, because without an ecosystem, a venture builder is nothing. You need to have a robust ecosystem supporting a venture builder. Today, if we are able to build companies, it's not because we can build companies. It's also because we're supported by those 3,000 investors who believe that what Favcy does is great enough, so that they can put in the money, and then we can build. So it's a combination of L&D, practical knowledge of digital first products, growth, and engineering, and also a capital ecosystem that's backing you up.
No, absolutely. Which brings me to the second part, actually. And recently I saw somebody releasing a new book. I mean, that guy's based out of the US, tech guy, and he's written a book around, how to use tech for non-tech founders, something on those lines. And he uses an analogy which is similar to baking a cake, right? So if I want to bake a cake, I'll go to the supermarket and I'll buy the ingredients, because I know in that supermarket all the ingredients are available. Then obviously I have infrastructure at home and so on. So, which brings me to the aggregator definition for FAPESI, in the sense that you have all the tools and the guidance available in one place, where a person who has an idea, who has maybe developed a prototype or has some traction in the market, wants to scale up, wants to build something really beautiful, they can use all the tools, digital tools, as well as the expertise, and the investment available with FAPESI, to really take their business to the next level. Does that sound appropriate?
So it is partly appropriate, and I'll tell you why it's partly, because the non-technical founders that we work with, they don't understand what tools they need. So you can be an aggregator only when you know that this is what's required and I can take it off the shelf. These are founders who are very idea stage founders. We take the max risk. We're not really worried. We look at founders who have market depth, market knowledge. But we roll up our sleeves. Our team rolls up our sleeves. The assembly line rolls up their sleeves, and then we build it with them, right? Also, what we're doing in this journey is we are graduating them to be digital first professionals, or we are helping them to find a co-founder who can be a digital first professional, because you have to run and scale up these companies digitally. So yes, Partly true because we are working with non-tech founders, but non-tech founders, it's unlike baking a cake. These guys don't know how to go about baking it, so don't know what are the kind of ingredients that need. Even that needs to be sort of handheld and moved with them. And once they are there, and you'll see success stories from Favcy. Once they are there, they are at par or even better with most of the founders you would have seen, because they have just completely graduated into being now a technical first founder, and they understand everything. They understand growth, they understand inbound, they understand engineering, they understand product customer life cycles, they understand everything by the end of it. But when they started, it was just a very strong founder from a market who found the space, but didn't know how to go about it. And that's the sweet spot where a venture builder like us operates.
So my question is, how is it different from incubators like Y Combinator or entrepreneurship cells as we have in Indian universities? I'm not really sure how successful they are, but they are there. They must be doing something as well. How different is a venture builder from these ecosystems?
So for this sort of, I think what you'll have to, again, I'll take some more time because I'll have to give you a background of my answer. Uh, and I'm generally not liked when I give this answer, but I'll be as transparent as I can be. Uh, See, the current ecosystem is a ecosystem that we've blindly copied of the American model, right? The current VCs that we have are blind copies of American VC model. And let's look at what an American VC model is. American VC model says that build fast, burn fast, build something superlative. Capital will become a moat. We'll pump in capital. And they back these again 20, 24, 25-year-old tech guys. And again, no offense, I think it's both. The model works, right? So I'm the first person to raise my hand and say that the model works. I'm not against the model. Uh, but when you look at the complete ecosystem that America has built, and I've been very fortunate to closely have a look at it over the years. I've had visits, I've met incubators, I've made one thing that strikes out from American VC is that the kind of capital that's available at seed stage is $1 million, $2 million, right? That kind of capital is not available to a seed stage founder in India, and I think that's where the difference starts coming, right? And then I'll of course now explain the complete ecosystem, because the ecosystem was built around it. Now, when you look at $1 million, $2 million being spent, they are being spent with the same idea that you can burn fast, etc. Now these kind of companies are the companies that are building a product first mindset, where they're building something and then they're trying to retrofit a business model to that product, right? So this is very different. You've built something, you said, okay, this looks very snazzy, let me build this up, and then you start retrofitting models. You said, okay, let me try this. What happens in that sense is that when you have a product and you're pivoting around and testing out different markets, you waste a lot of money, right? So the 1 million, $2 million suffices there because the wastage rate is very high. But they're fine with it. They're fine with it because they need speed. And the VCs there are also looking at the ability of a founder to actually take that kind of risk, take that kind of burn that money, test it out, how quickly they were able to pivot, how smart they were while doing that, what's the kind of strategy they used, and therefore they pump in money, as soon as they start seeing. So the American VC model is a very pyramid form of model where you put, let's say, XXXX in 10 companies. Then in 3 companies you double down, you put 5x, 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 and then three of those 2 companies you put 10x, 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 and in the first company you put a 50x, right? So literally the fund size gets deployed in the best company by the same pyramid logic, because you would have deployed maximum capital in the best company, and it works. Mathematically it works for them. It's a great model. It's a time tested model for them. They've been doing well in times of crunches like right now what we're seeing. It may take a couple of years, it'll go underground, then it'll resurface again, but it doesn't change. We've seen these cycles again and again, and it just works. But when you juxtapose that to the Indian ecosystem has more non-technical founders, right? The seed capital is, look at the seed capital that we get is a crore, 50 lakh. It's It's what 10% of the seed capital that's accessible to a founder in US. Therefore, the model of burn fast, build fast doesn't work here, right? And you therefore really need to figure out a market problem and solve that problem, show strength, right? And then figure out that how you're going to increase that journey by taking more capital and then building it. In fact, 1 or 2 million today is given to a pre-Series A company, and sometimes even Series A company. $2 million is also Series A these days. So look at the kind of change that is there, right? And the Indian VCs follow that model, and therefore for them they say, just because the number of companies are so huge in India, right? They are fine with utilizing the same American VC model at a Series A model. So they start giving $2 million at Series A, and then they double down, and then they triple down in 8x, in the same pyramid structure, and it works for them. The problem, therefore, is what happens to these companies at an idea to Series A. Almost all of them die, and who bears the loss of it? The angel, right? Because the angel has put in a crore, poor guy, has put in 5 crores in 5 companies. Most of them don't do well because the model is not suited for the Indian large startups that are coming out. And I think for us, we number one was that we said that okay, we'll create a model which is suited for India, and therefore we will venture build with non-technical founders, help them in frugal capital. We'll take the risk. So in the 15%, we take the risk. We take the risk of making sure that they reach a certain state, and therefore we were actually able to create economies of scale as a venture builder and provide all of that. Now comes a very interesting point of incubators and accelerators. That's again an American VC concept, right? Incubators there, for example, are essentially places where you can play with the 1 million, 2 million that the angels are giving, right? So they essentially give you some kind of mentorship, they give you space, they give you that kind of models. And also, in India, for example, we are government funded incubators, right? Most of them are government funded incubators. Again, the same problem. The capital at this stage of that, pre-Series A stage is so low that you really can't create models. The incubator model, worldwide hasn't been very successful to be fair. And the accelerator models essentially are built on post-product traction, where you're saying you can get market networks, mentors, people, etc. So I genuinely enjoy the Y Combinator model because they've shown success. I think it's a question of great intake, putting in small money, and great outtake. Right, that's the model that they're doing. Uh, Philosophically, that's the right model. You need some kind of a system where you can create great intake, and that's true for any educational body, right? And IIM today is an IIM because of great intake. ISB is a great ISB because of great intake. So is Y Combinator. It's the same logic. You get great people, put in some money, and you get a great outtake. So philosophically, that's the right model. But working that out in India, where the pre-Series A money is so low, all these models seldom work. So what we needed was a model which says that we're not, number one, going to be dependent upon grants. So venture builder is not dependent on grants. We are not going to take money from the founders because they don't have money. I mean, if they had the money, they'll put it in their business. Why will they give it to us? Therefore, what we need to build is a model where we can take equity, we can obsess about equity, we can improve the quality of the startup equity, and find partners who are willing to bite into that equity because they trust what Favcy is doing. That's what we did. So we stepped back and we said we can't work on grants. There aren't enough grants, and if the grants go, I mean the numbers are so small that you really can hardly can do anything in this. So as a venture builder, we first build the complete asset line. We give that against equity, and we have partners who bite into it because they trust what we're doing and what we're building. So that's the difference. So we are really roll up our sleeves and work. And in fact, we are now going out to incubators and helping them to change their way of looking at it, because the incubators today have also realized and said that the grant money is going wasted. The government has woken up. In fact, I was in Gujarat last week, and I had the pleasure of meeting 2 or 3 government officials. And you will be surprised, Saurabh, the kind of knowledge that these government officials have is far higher and far superior than what the incubators have or accelerators in India have. These guys knew everything. They had the exposure to American models, Indian models, excellent people, excellent government people. right? But the problem is they also are, their hands are tied and they're saying the only way of giving it out is to go to an incubator and give the money, who doesn't know what to do with it, and they're wasting that money, right? So I think the models are going to change. Traditionally, venture builders in US have also done well. In fact, uh, the LPs of venture builders have actually done better than LPs of VC funds, primarily because venture builders are built on the premise that we'll make sure that the wastage isn't there, right? We curb wastage. Within the same money, we are trying to build more companies, right? Diversifying, economies of scale, less wastage. So all of this combined together is what makes a venture builder stand apart in from an incubator or an accelerator. Again, I think it's a new model that's coming up, and just to bore the audience
Yeah.
again for another 1 minute is as a venture builder model, you'll see two different models coming out. One is called a rocket net model, which is that you own 90% of the company and a founder gets a 10%. And the other is, I was very fortunate, somebody called it the Favcy model, and I was very, very thrilled to hear that, is where the founder owns 85%, we own a 15%. But we own 15% for the obsession that we bring on making sure that the 0 to 1, 0 to 10 journey is done very well, and that the companies can start scaling up. So yeah, so I think these are the two kinds of models. I think fortunately, the model that we created, the 85-15 in favor of the founder, is working well for the Indian ecosystem, or what we've seen so far.
No, that's actually very important what you said, and I don't think it was boring at all. There are so many threads I want to follow up on what you said. Let me just start by saying that my first experience of a service, a startup offering a service to another startup, was when I worked in a startup in 2012. It was a funded startup, and they what they did was they said that being a startup, you should focus on your product or service and leave the HR part to us. We will be the plug-in HR for you. And that was kind of a fascinating thing, because I've always believed I'm a very lazy engineer. So I always believe in minimum input and maximum output, which translates to I do not like reinventing the wheel at all. So what you have learned in your journey so far, not only building Favcy but and Pratham and IIFM, but also now building so many other ventures for other people in different spaces. Now you're using those efficiencies to create better services, or better, I would say, ecosystems for newer ventures, which makes a lot of sense to me. The second thing that I really was fascinated with was, um, there's a Harvard professor of Indian origin, and last year he released a book about entrepreneurship. And he compared entrepreneurship models in America and other developed countries with middle income countries like India, Brazil, etc. And he found out something very, he says something very interesting, where he says that an entrepreneur in India will not just have to make his own company or venture, product, service, whatever he's selling, but at the same time, he needs to create the ecosystem around his venture so that his venture survives. So he's not only responsible for making one service, but he's responsible for creating the entire ecosystem, because in India right now, we don't have that ecosystem for entrepreneurs. Which brings me to another observation. There are certain communities in India which are always, which have always been business savvy in all parts of India, be it Marwadis, Banyas, Khatris, or Sindhis, or Shettis, and so on and so forth. They had created their family-based ecosystem, which allows their businesses to flourish, even though the margins initially are low. But since now more and more people are getting educated, they have access to capital. India has around $2,000 of disposable income, and I hope we reach the $4,000 magic number soon. But till that time, the democratization of this access to information around entrepreneurship and building ventures is very important, which unfortunately is kind of captured by a few people having those three magic three-letter pedigrees behind the name, or they are in the networks wherein people having money will just put money behind them. What I'm trying to say over here is Indians have always been very good business people, just like other populations in the world. But in the current startup space, it just seems very, I would say, counterintuitive that a lot of Indian startups and unicorns are not profit making, whereas we have always focused on the profit part. 23 out of the 100 unicorns India has, only 23 are profitable. The others are not, and we've seen what happened with the Paytm IPO recently, which has had an impact on the LIC IPO as well. I mean, there are other factors as well, but yeah, it has been there. um, isn't this a very Western concept, and why haven't we woken up to the Indian concept of business making earlier? What do you think about that?
So I think a great question. It has multiple facets that came out, and I'll break down the facets so that again I can share a description of what I'm going to say. The first part is I completely agree. India has very strong business old economy units. You are absolutely right. The Marwaris, the Banyas, they worked in close knit units, and they helped each other out uh, through financial methods, and they started scaling up. Uh, and let's look at India's old economy and how they made money. Right. Let's take a step back, because that's very important to understand what's happening in the new economy. Right. We've traditionally been a services based country, right? Where the money came for the last 25, 30 years through services, right? Products has never been a strong suit, right? Manufacturing was there, it wasn't, I mean, there are issues with manufacturing. We had some agriculture income initially, and then it all turned into tertiary sector, the services sector. Now, when you look at the services sector, that comes very naturally to India because, capital is not required. You can put in hard work, and then you can grow from strength to strength, right? That's very India. Even if you look at Infosys, right, it's a tech services company. It's not a tech product company. And that's what, number one, is very important for us to understand the Indian ecosystem, right? The people have made money through services, through their hard work, have grown from strength to strength, have then utilized the capital that they've made to grow further, and that's how they have been, right? Organically making sure that the companies keep growing. That's India. uh, Now when you look at digital, and that's the example I started with actually today, digital is not a services play. You can be a digital service provider, but digital per se is not a service play. It's a product play. It's an architectural play. You have to architect something, you have to project plan, resource allocate, execute. And unfortunately, unlike products of yesteryears where you could come, create a product, go to a distributor and start the distribution, here the distribution of any product that you create, a digital product that you create, is also online. And therefore, another game is of how differentiated you are at an internet space, because you have to own the minds of people over Facebook, Instagram, Google, etc., to start marketing your product. Now, sort of, number one, it doesn't come intuitively to us. So let's face it, we are not a generation that understands product making very well, but we move to digital. The second is digital product creators who are also coming in everything. They cannot work like a services company. They have to have the kind of money to build a product. That's the ecosystem's requirement. So first is you can't be profitable when you're building a product because it has its own gestation period. The third big problem is, unlike if you had a product and you were actually able to sell it at, let's say, uh, a retailer's outlet, or you were able to create a brand, etc. Today, when you build a digital product, you have to own the mind space, and look at the mind space number, 120 crores, right? Look at the mind space that you have to own. This is we're not talking of 1 million users, 5 million users. We're talking about mind space of the entire nation to us. Look at the kind of cost that you need to own that mind space, because that's how the internet plays, right? Now put that all of that in perspective, and you see that, number one, you're not a product nation, but you have to put money behind products, and therefore we're very fortunate that the American VCs, the Indian VCs who were arms and legs of the American VCs, the Chinese in between, the Japanese in between, came and put in that money in this country, because number one, they understood that the Indians don't get this. So somebody needs to build that kind of money and put money, and therefore there's a burn to build a product. then you need the best of people working on the product, and therefore there's a burn to get the best of people, right? You need the smartest minds to be creating something like this. And the third then is to own the mind space, a brand, or to promote your brand in such a large country with such large population. You again need to burn money, right? So yes, I'm with you when people say that, look at the burn that Paytm's done, or look at the burn that Zomato is doing. They're not profitable, but look at what they've created, right? It's a product first. They build services, they build outreach, they build things that couldn't have been built without capital and losses in 30 years, 40 years. They've built that in 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, right? And therefore, I am not against that whole idea that they're burning money or something, because hey, I think our lives are also subsidized by VC money. So I as a consumer, I'm very grateful that all of this is happening. But yes, I hear you, but also try and understand that this is expensive, right? If you're And therefore a lot of these founders, I give credit to these founders because they are running a VC treadmill race, right? They know their money will burn down. They have to still build more, build more, build more, build more, build more, and they have to run this VC treadmill, right? So the credit goes to that founder more than the VCs, right? Whoever took that up and said, okay, I am the one who's going to run on this frontier. I know that this will be a loss-making venture for years to come. I'll not sleep. I'll stay in anxiety. I will always keep sweating. My heartbeat will keep going up. I will have diabetes, and I will still build. So I think the real heroes are those founders who've agreed to become unicorns more than anything else, because I think it's just tremendous effort that's required to be a unicorn. And therefore, I completely understand. And I say that if the money is burning, it's burning. How unfortunate that may be, it is the reality because of these facts. Product, great people, and mindset, ownership are very expensive to do. The second question that you said while doing this was that, is there any other way? Yes, there's other way, right? A lot of my friends and a lot of founders that I've met are also building digital first companies. So I'm talking only on digital, right? I'm not talking of old economy. I'm just talking new economy. They're building digital first companies and they're building it frugally. They found some spots and spaces which are niche, and they're catering to it with a 5-member unit, 10-member unit, 50-member unit, 100-member unit. They're catering to international markets, and they're predominantly SaaS plays, software as a service being sold, right? And they are making money. They're making profits. Uh, a classical company that you can have a look at is Zoho, right? But it took 30, 35, 40 years to build what Zoho is, right? Again, credit to that founder for being able to have that kind of vision that I'll build it slowly, but I'll build it large, right? So I genuinely think both are different sides of the same coin, and you will have unicorns, you will have those founders who will agree to run the treadmill race, because I think that's the big point that I'm trying to make. There's no other way if you're building something that large. The second is you build it organically. You build a 50-member team, very happy teams, remote teams. A lot of these teams are chilling in Goa, chilling in the mountains, and it's a great feeling because these guys are making enough money to sustain themselves and more. They don't need VC money, and they're fine with it. And what they keep doing very smartly is they know that their product may start going down as a life cycle. It will mature and it will come down, but they come up with another product that is relevant, differentiated, follows the same principles, and they come up with another line of products, and then they again start building it. Mailchimp is a classical US based example, not US based, actually international example. It's a European company. So Mailchimp is another classical example. Again, grew organically till Kajabi is another example internationally. Did not take VC money and has built a magnificent product, uh, and was a unicorn when it raised money just to get a valuation done. They didn't need the money, right? So there will be these kind of examples, Saurabh. But I think as you know, fence sitters and naysayers, we need to understand what is happening more than say that why. Both are needed. The founders of unicorns, the VCs were backing them, uh, the international VCs were backing them. They are one of the smartest bunch of people that you'll ever get to meet. So if they are doing something, most likely there is a reason behind it, right? And I think that's the thing. So both can happen. Uh, Primarily from a venture builder's perspective, if you just want a perspective, and from the fund's perspective as well, that we partner with, and that we've co-built, is we are okay with both kinds of companies. In fact, we'll be happier to build organically grown companies because we don't have the pressure to return capital. But at the same time, we will also have these kind of founders who will have to run the treadmill race. And hats off to both kinds of founders who are, number one, organically building it, willing to take the pain, figuring out different methods of financing their business, and also hats off to the treadmill runners. I mean, you know, uh, India is a much better place because of them. So complete credit to them.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. What I gathered from that was, either you get the money or you get the team. And in order to get the team, you need the money sometimes. In order to get the money, you need the team sometimes. So there's always going to be a slight chicken and egg thing going on, and the person who figures it out as to how to get what is needed at the right time is the person who's really going to have success. There is a bit of I mean, apart from these VCs and everyone building ventures and helping building ventures in India and creating that ecosystem, which has given employment to millions. I hope millions, but also given that hope to thousands of founders across India. There is a small percentage among them as well who are in this just for the personal wealth creation, the greed, which sooner or later becomes a liability to the company itself and the growth itself. We've seen that with VCs. We've seen that in some really big celebrity companies right now in the past few months. And we've seen that earlier also. I mean, in 2015, the case of housing.com, the young CEO doing all sorts of things. Yeah. So, don't you think that there needs to be? I mean, yes, the market will correct itself. I understand that people will understand from looking at other people's experiences and learn from it and know what not to do in the future. But don't you think there is a way so that young founders, and India is the youngest country in the world today, they can understand that these are certain do's and don'ts, and they have to be there in our fabric of thought before we go on to build a venture and take other people's money and all the responsibility that comes along with it. Don't you think there's a better way? If there is, how can we do that?
So I think one thing that you know let me reassess and come back. I think there are two things that I'd like to add, not one. The first is, as a founder, you have to start believing that you're not the business, right? You are at best a custodian of a business. No matter whether you own 100% equity, or you own 50% equity, or you own 25% equity, you are not the owner. You're a custodian, because what you've created is built by efforts of many people, and built by the money that you get from a lot of people, right? So you at best a custodian. And the first thing that we also encourage all our founders to think is to start thinking like a custodian, not start saying that ownership. It doesn't work, because these are big businesses, large businesses that will give employment to so many, and will possibly last years. So you're a custodian, number one. And the value that you get is because you build something that can be handed over to somebody else. So start coming and building with that mindset, right? That's when the companies grow. That's first. The second is a lot to do with the culture. Sort of is a culture of a company, the way the company gets created. Uh, and across, you can come out with various cultures and various definitions, and theorems about how to develop a culture. Actually, there are only two kinds of culture that I've finally seen across all companies. One culture is a culture of extraction, right? Where बहती गंगा में सब हाथ धो लेते हैं. That's very Indian. Extract कर लो. Extract what you get. And the other culture that I think I'm seeing a transition now happening in this country, but you know I've seen that in American culture a lot, is the culture of abundance, where you're literally saying that I am here to create abundance for myself and for others. Others also come in and say, I'm going to create abundance for others. And I'm going to create, and that culture is culture of enablement and abundance. So you enable everyone and you create abundance by virtue of that. Now you mix both. The first being, that I am a custodian, and the second of culture of abundance. And you start getting better founders, right? Because then there is no such thing as ownership, and then there's no such thing as extraction, right? And if you combine these two, you get a very powerful culture that can be created for everybody else to also, utilize and to emulate in some form, right? So that, I think that's the kind of culture that you need in startup ecosystems, uh, which is not a culture of extraction. And I've seen culture of extractions also succeed as companies. So I'm not saying right, wrong, works, not works, but abundance is what you need at a startup level, where you're creating for others, where you are at par with others, where you are a custodian, and where you can then start creating abundance for everyone. I think in that sense is where you have to also start controlling your vices. Right? Greed is one of them, pride is one of them, envy is one of them. So when you start creating those vices will also go away when that culture is correct. In that extraction mindset, all vices will also come. You want to extract. You have greed. You have pride. You have envy. You have maybe sloth. Maybe lust. I don't know. I mean, I've seen all kinds of problems with founders. Right, all vices having a problem on the company, and then ultimately the company going away. So I think the what's the better way in my mind is have that clear mindset that I'm a custodian, and the second is I'm going to create a company which is with a mindset of abundance and is abundance for everyone. I think that's the kind of quality of company. That's the kind of quality of fabric that you need when you're building a startup uh, for it to succeed and run long.
That's wonderful. So I again keep coming back to it, but a little bit before we move on to the last one. What I wanted to ask was, yes, so certain people do it for the money and whatnot and fame, and those are all, I would say, short-term goals and short-term reasons. Um, Ultimately, we know that Indians are very innovative. We've always been innovative. uh, our innovation doesn't really get recognized or boosted up in the same way as it should. For example, I mean, if I just give a couple of examples, we had discussed that last year also. Somebody who had come up with the car which runs on water, right, in India, and it made the headlines and whatnot, and then it's just out. And we are
Ramar Pillai was his name.
exactly. So right now, in this situation that we're living in our country, where the international crude oil is literally breaking our back, our neighbors like Sri Lanka and Pakistan are already suffering really badly, and we're still not, those kind of innovations are what we need. But they're never really supported, or in some way or the other, whether by private VCs or government schemes, whatnot. They just kind of miss it all out. That is one part of where we keep missing. Is it because they don't have the right connections, the right pedigree, the right people to support them, or is it just because they're hampering or harming somebody else's business right now? That is the first part that I wanted to ask you. Second part was, we are innovative, we have innovations, okay, it's not recognized. So is that one of the reasons why we keep on copying products and services which are there in the US, Europe, and right now in China, because China is the world's most innovative country today? So is it one of those reasons that we just look at low hanging fruits, ki pehle let me just make this small company, get my money, exit from it, and then I'll make a bigger company which will actually create some impact? Is it because of that?
Okay. So a good question. I mean, so I think two parts to again your question. The first is obviously why innovation not, or why in our definition innovation is not happening, and the second is why are we copycats. I think these are your two questions that come out of this. On the innovation and taking example of Ramarpalli, so we still don't know whether that was true or it wasn't true, right? There is conflicting evidence and views on whether he did create out of that plant and water combination. We don't know. Uh, but innovation, Saurabh, is also dependent upon degree of capital that's available to you, right? Uh, Research and development is expensive. It's not cheap. And as I said again, the kind of capital that's available in India at Series A, Series B, Series C is at par with what's available in the world. But research and development requires that capital to be given at grassroots level, because that's where your genuine money isn't there. We can fool ourselves by believing that money is there. Money isn't there. We don't have money at grassroots level. The inequality of income is extremely high, and the people who have the money have so many options to choose from where to deploy the capital, that they deploy it at the best possible reasons, at best possible return potential ventures, right? So money isn't there for R&D. So number one, I think that's the big problem uh, that we haven't been able to solve, and I don't know how to solve it. It needs a robust financial system, a lot of people investing in the stock markets, that going towards primary markets to the VC market, and then going to angels and Henny. That system isn't there. Uh, so I think that's one big problem. R&D money is missing. Second question that you did was copycat idea. So see, what happens is in product development, I said again, we are not a product first thinking country. We don't, uh, we've never been. Uh, so when you have some stellar founders who are able to identify a very relevant and a differentiated need, I'm using these two words, which are very well thought out. One is you should have a relevant need, which is for a large population. And differentiated in the internet economy, in the digital economy, means that there are very few competitors solving that need digitally. Right? So when you have a very relevant, very differentiated need for a very large market, is when you actually build a large digital business. Now, what happens here is that, if let's say uh, Uber became a success, it became a success because of an ecosystem that allowed Uber to prosper. Google Maps, for example, is one big reason why Uber became successful, utilizing Google Maps. And also, they realized that there's a huge need for transportation, making transportation simpler and stuff like that. Now, Mr. Agarwal, who made Ola, right? Did he copycat? Yes, he did. Uh, did he copy the idea? Yes. But to even understand that you need a very relevant and a differentiated need in the Indian thing will also come from when you start scanning the market, right? Something which is very relevant and differentiated in US may become relevant differentiated 2 years later here or 3 years later here. So as a founder, is he a smart founder? Of course, he's a smart founder, right? And therefore, should he not do it? He has to do it, right? Because relevant and differentiated needs तो उतनी ही है. अब वो पहले वहां पे होती है क्योंकि इकोसिस्टम वहां का डेवलप्ड है. देयर इज अ ह्यूज इकोसिस्टम दैट्स डेवलप्ड हियर. तो वो सेम प्रॉब्लम सेम नीड्स इन एनी केस यू विल बी सॉल्विंग हियर, right? And therefore I genuinely believe that we should also let go of that notion that we are copycats and things. It's not needed. uh, uh, Understand the problems that the Indian founders have, right? uh, could somebody have had created an Uber in India? Absolutely not. पैसा ही नहीं है to create that kind of thing at a thing. Only when somebody created somewhere else is when the VCs woke up and said, hey, let's try and find founders in this continent who are building this, because this is very relevant, very differentiated. We are willing to put in that kind of money. That's how Ola came. So I think number one, we should accept our problems and think, and also start celebrating. I think uh, we will end up copying ideas, and that's not really a copy. It's just a, in my mind, it's that what's relevant differentiated outside is relevant differentiated here. 2 years later, let's put in money. And a lot of these ideas that you see today were actually created by VC dollars. So it's really the VC who may have copied it than the founder. The founder was trying to do something. Could Mr. Agarwal have created an Ola without capital? Absolutely not. Right. So also try and understand these are capital side games. that are happening, because and that's how capital has always been, traditionally. I mean, historically also, if you look at it, what was arbitrage? Arbitrage was, you bought in some continent, you sold in some continent. The Rothschild family became what they became because of just arbitrage between the brothers, right? That's what the capital ecosystem will always remain, right? So if they find an arbitrage opportunity, which is in US, they've invested there and they want to double down and figure out something in the Indian ecosystem, they will. It's about the founder, whether that founder was right in time thinking of that and building upon that, because they obviously then reached out and they built and they helped him build what he built. So I think it's going to happen. It's going to stay till the time the Indian capital ecosystem becomes so robust that all kinds of research, development, capital is available to the founders. This is going to stay, and I think we'll have to be, unfortunately, be okay with what we are. And let's face it, we're not innovators in true sense, as a country, and that's purely because of the capital ecosystem. It's not because of anything else. We may be very, very smart, creative people, but that's how it is. It's just the capital ecosystem.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, this echoes so many thoughts and a lot of things that you've said. Other guests on such conversations matter have also talked about. Dr. Raman Atri, he talked about how project management can, improve the R&D in Indian government-sponsored labs by at least 30 to 40%. Just project management, and then Priyank and Anurag, and they all talk about the same things as we've talked about here today. Um, my question, after understanding this, is we are facing a lot of problems. Ultimately, an entrepreneur solves a problem. I mean, I'm running my second company right now, so I'm solving a problem. We are facing sustainability related problems: water, air, food, quality of food, anything you name it. India is the worst in one of is one of the worst in the world. We have people who want to do these things. Dr. Bhakti Devi came in the last episode and she talked about how everyone wants to improve the water situation in India. Nobody is doing it. So she's created a fellowship with Rishi Hood University recently. Um, is it because the ecosystem doesn't exist in the US right now? So because of which we are not copying it right now, and hence it is not allowing entrepreneurs, social entrepreneur, whatever label you want to put them against. Is it because of that the ecosystem there doesn't exist, so it doesn't exist here, or VCs don't allow it to come here or whatever, and we are not able to solve these problems?
So VCs per se are capitalists, right?
Yeah.
Their job is to make more money from money. Other than impact investors who are looking at creating value and impact. So there are different kinds of venture capitalists that are out there, right? Traditional VCs who are not impact investors will not be bothered about these things, although they may silently put this in their thesis that we are also looking at sustainability as a concept. Impact investors are bothered about it, but let's look at India as an equation, right? Now, for us, I think we're very fortunate because the government does not have to invest, because there's so much money coming from outside on just building startups, right? US has been an active investor. Abhi try down karega, but has been an active investor. China, unfortunately, we've broken our ties and investments. Japan has been so as India, we've been very fortunate that for your traditional capitalistic investments, there are investors who are willing to back you. I think the priority of sustainability falls on the government uh, in some manner, because it's part of welfare rather than anything else. And welfare and warfare are two things that are typically government's responsibility and role, right? They have to protect us and they have to give us welfare. So air, water, etc., are all actually government's responsibility. Uh, and I think a lot of government initiatives have been there on welfare. The challenge again with this kind of thing is that we just too many people on limited resources, uh, and we can crib and cry, but I think it's just the when your resources are limited, and these are limited resources, but the number of people that are dependent upon these resources is just increasing and will keep increasing. In fact, There'll be more people in their working population in India in the next 5 years, which have ever been. I think that's the kind of stat that somebody shared with me. So they all need these resources, and they will all extract those resources because those resources are needed. Now, how do you change that? How do you do that? I'm no expert on that. I don't think I understand it well enough to comment. But all I understand is that I think the government is trying to do certain things, uh, but the resources are so limited that, compared to the kind of population and the explosion that's happened on the population side, it's bound to happen that these problems will happen. I think what it needs, therefore, is a better planning ecosystem. You need people to move away to remote places. You need people to get, widely spread out in the country so that your resources can widely be utilized. Why is Delhi so polluted? Is because of us. You reduce the population to 1/10 of this, you will see there's no pollution. I mean, we can all keep saying that, it's fire outside, but it's just the number of people, right? When you extract something, the resources are not replenishing themselves at the same speed at which they're getting extracted. So I think it requires a very consistent and a disciplined method of how do we make sure that we spread out in the country rather than getting localized, because we are depleting resources much faster than replenishment, and I think that's here to stay, unless the government figures out a method, or the people themselves start saying that, hey, Delhi is not worth living, let me go out and go towards some other place, and things start happening like this, where then the resources can replenish themselves. But I'm no expert on this. But I don't think you should be even worried about saying that external international VCs have to come and solve this. They will not. This is a very government problem. Welfare is a government issue, and we have to figure it out with them. So it's for all of us and the government to figure it out. I don't think we should be depending on external people for this.
All right. Well, we've reached the end of the episode, Pranav, and thank you so much for taking out all this time. Just last two questions, quick questions. Any career advice for young students and professionals who would like to embark on a similar journey as you have?
Okay. For a young student, I would say, no matter what you understand and what you know, uh, understand how work is done. Right. You have to understand that, you know your ability to architect a plan, project plan, resource allocate, and execute is the right method of working. Don't just blindly execute. I think that's very important, because that changes the way you start working every day, right? For example, your ability to prioritize is more important than your ability to be efficient. And these are small things that unfortunately are not taught in B schools or in colleges, right? We are taught about efficiency. In fact, look at accounting principles; they're all built on efficiency ratios, right? And that's something that is just forcing you to execute without even thinking of what you're executing, and you tend to waste more. So I think one thing is you need to prioritize and execute, but when you're executing, you have to execute like there's no tomorrow. You have to be crazily executing it for results to come. Second is, I'm coming to career advice, but second, I'm just talking of some habits. Second is you've got to be very disciplined, right? I've not seen anybody successful without having that discipline in them, and rigor in them. So I think if you understand how to go about working, then it's all about discipline and how disciplined you stay and you are. Third is learn more skills, right? I see a lot of young guys today who shy away from selling as a skill, right? Trust me, if I am anywhere I am today, it's because somebody taught me sales, and forced me to actually go. And I'm one of those sort of who've done door to door insurance selling, so in cold markets. So, somebody forced me to do that. It took away the inhibitions of my life. It helped me understand people better. So pick up skills, and the skills can be anything. It could be trading as a skill, financial trading as a skill. It can be sales as a skill. It can be coding as a skill. But pick up skills. Skills will hold you in good stead over your lifetime. It's very important. that you learn these kind of things and you practice them. And the fourth is that give yourself 8,000, 10,000 hours for whatever you're doing. The last is that the young generation today is very distracted, and they start somewhere and they start moving around things. So as I turn 40, I've started feeling that I've become that old to now start saying young generation. But but it's a very distracted generation. The centennials are very, very distracted, and I think at some point of time for them to be successful, they need to start understanding that we need like 8,000, 10,000 hours on something, without which you will not be successful in something. So I think these three, four things would be my word of advice, if at all. And I think वो हो ही जाता है सबका कुछ ना कुछ अच्छा. मतलब if you follow these three, four basic principles, you will find yourself, you will be successful, and that successful can be a definition which everybody has. It could be money, it could be fame, recognition,
Yeah.
whatever. But these are three, four things that you need to uh, be very certain about and work towards. So yeah, so that'll be my small advice.
Perfect. And I think that's very valuable. How you've deconstructed that, it's very valuable, especially for the instant gratification generation. That's how I call them. Um, Last question: one line for the world which you think will make the world a better place.
So I think I don't even have to think about this because this line I've used so many times in my life, and it's 10 most powerful two-letter words put together, and they make such a beautiful line. And that is very simple. If it is to be, it is up to me. And in my mind, if you follow that, that changes everything. You stop cribbing, you stop cursing, you stop believing that the control was somewhere else, you stop having sleepless nights. You just start believing that if it is up to me, if it is to be, it is up to me. And in my mind, I think that just makes a world a better place.
That is beautiful. So beautifully put. Thank you so much, Pranav, for taking out such a huge amount of time from your busy schedule and being here and discussing this really important topic.
I'm grateful you invited me. Thank you so much.